What? Dave, you're back? What is
Yeah,
happening?
yeah, can you imagine? After all these weeks, I'm finally back for our live show.
How fantastic is this? Welcome, welcome, Dave. So, what have you been up to for the last 2 weeks?
It has been travel, 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 some work travel, some family travel, and just a lot of busyness.
Well, we're glad you're back. We've had two exciting shows when you've been gone. We really dove into Social Security and we dove into the health savings accounts, and it was just fantastic. But nothing is better than when you're back in the seat just answering so many questions for us.
Well, it's so good to be here, and we're almost getting to Halloween, CR. Is it trick or treat time? Do we start wearing our costumes yet? What do we do?
Yeah, we got to get into. I mean, I wear orange all year round, so I'm already set for Halloween time. But yeah, I think we should do a Halloween
Yeah,
show
yeah,
that we can
next
come
week.
dressed up.
Yeah, it's really sad because I don't know, you don't have young children, so you probably don't even know what it is. There's a show out there called Puppy Dog Pals that my son loves. Our disabled child just absolutely loves it. I mean, he gets more excited for that than you do for Orange. I mean, it's just crazy to see. Well, they said, why don't you dress up as Bob, who's the guy that's his dad, or caretaker, whatever you call him with dogs. So anyway, the guy looks more like you, not me. So you may have to dress up like him, and we'll send you in place with this little kid that's dressed up like a puppy dog pal.
Yeah, I'll come show up and we'll get him a little car and we'll just push him around.
Yeah, his name's Bob, so you can just look him up sometime. You'll be able to
Okay,
see that. But
perfect. I'll see if we can do it. Maybe I can even do some cameo appearances. We'll see. Well, thank you for being here, Dave, and everyone else. Thank you for joining us live and those on replay. We are so excited you are here. As always, we are here doing we're answering all of your questions, all dealing with retirement. And it's so fun, Dave, because we get to dive into some topics that some people shy away from, some people exaggerate. But I think the purpose of what we're trying to do is just help people to take action and get something going right now.
yeah, it really is. It's that time we need to start taking action. A lot of things are going on in the world that are going to affect our retirement, and we need to prepare ourselves for it today while we still can before it gets to that point. You look at many people that we've talked to over the last year regarding the stock market. They were afraid to go into principal protected products, and now they're calling, going, boy, I sure wish I would have when you guys talked to me. Now my assets are down 20, 30%. I'm have to take money out for my retirement, starting to create some of that havoc that you guys talk about in your webinars. But we don't want that happening. We want it solved before we ever get to that point.
And Dave, today we are specifically talking about the 2023 Social Security and Medicare changes. And I've asked each of the last guests we've had on the show what drives them. And I want to ask you, as we talk about the Social Security and the Medicare and just even retirement, what drives you to help people in this space?
I realize that most people are not getting the information they need. It's the reality, even from a government program standpoint. There's no advocate inside of the government trying to help people maximize their benefits. In fact, it's all designed, and talked about HSA last week when you go through some of the details and things that were left out of the plan, all driven by the hope that America will screw it up. I mean, that's the reality. Is that means the programs last longer. There's not accountability for the politicians to have to deal with it any earlier than they have to. And that's unfortunate. What we really want to do is make sure people are getting what they deserve. And it'd be nice if the government would step in and help us do that, but they're not. So it requires people like myself to help people better understand what they should do, so at least they can maximize their situation.
David, I'm grateful you're here to answer questions. And I want to remind those that are here with us live, if you have a question, go ahead and get it in on Facebook or YouTube Live, and we'll do our best to squeeze it in with all the other questions that we have. Again, we collect all these questions, Dave, that come in from webinars, from our social media, from our websites, so many places. Our team gets them, puts them all together. So we have all these questions for you. And I don't want people to walk away from this not getting their answers. So if you have a question, get that submitted, and if not, I'll share at the end where you can also submit your question in case we didn't get it. But Dave, are you ready to dive into our questions today?
I am. Let's go.
All right, let's get our one here from Stephen. What do the upcoming 2023 Social Security and Medicare changes mean for my retirement?
The biggest thing is they're going to be a help to you when you look at what happened on both sides. Social Security is going up, by 8.7%, the largest increase we've had in over 40 years, if you can imagine that type of an increase, which unfortunately for most of you, you've already had the costs go up at least that much. So all it's doing is helping you continue to try to buy the goods and services you were 2 years ago that you were able to afford back then that you've struggled with now. So, but at least it helps. At least it's a position forward. Medicare is going back 3%, which also is good news. But again, it went up 14% last year. So now we're back to what, an 11% increase when we look at the periods of time we're going through. So all in all, it's great. It's just unfortunate that when we look back at what happened in 2022 and the beginning of the year, the adjustments there were pretty struggling for many retirees.
And Dave, I mean, there's a good list, a good healthy list here that goes through and explains all that. And for those who are interested, you can go over to retirementriskadvisors.com and check out our blog there, and you can read more about it. But Dave, when can the seniors start making changes to these plans for 2023?
Yeah, so what you're going to see is January when everything hits the first of the year. Now they give us this information in advance, so hopefully we can use it for our planning. We can start figuring out what impact it's going to have, and most of it again is positive, but there is another negative impact that this increase in Social Security will cause. Going to cause more people to pay more tax on their Social Security benefits. If you didn't have provisional income before, you might now. And if you did before, you've got more income to be taxed. So, again, with the good news doesn't always mean that there's no bad news, but it's nice that we're at least going in the right direction, that we're getting the increases and we're getting the reductions in Medicare, hopefully help us better allow seniors to have the lifestyle that they are expecting.
Now, Dave, you did talk about that reduction in the Medicare, about 3%. Is there any positive changes for the Social Security?
Yeah, again, the biggest thing when we look at it is just the additional money coming out. Now, they do have increases, and I can't remember what the exact amount is for employees that'll be paying in. That goes up from $147,000 to 160 something, I believe. I'm not exactly sure where that landed. I haven't looked at it that close yet to see all those details. And memorize them. But when we look at it, again, for the employee, it's going to be a little more expensive. For the retiree, you're going to get a little more out of it. And remember, Social Security is designed, though, to help the retiree. And that's the thing we've got to remember. If we want these benefits to be around for ourselves, going to become a little more costly for us to pay for those during our working years.
Dave, I appreciate the insight on that. And again, if you have any questions and you're watching live, please go ahead and get that put in there and we'll be able to dissect that and talk a little bit more about it. But Dave, in the meantime, I do want to bring up the next one here. It's so hard because as we're starting to talk about everything in retirement plans, Dave, we look at balancing market risk, interest rate risk, inflation risk. But there's the one risk that we always tend to overlook, Dave, and that is longevity. And that's something that I wanted to bring up about Regan's question here is why should I plan to spend 30 plus years in retirement, or why should I plan?
Because what we're finding is you're living much longer than you think you will, but definitely much longer than what the government is portraying we're going to live. If you look out there, again, with full retirement age from Social Security being at age 67, well, 66 and 4 months going to 67 for those of you born 1960 or later. But if we're here between 66 and 67, we've got Medicare that kicks in at 65. That pretty much tells society that, hey, this is really the time you should start looking at retiring. This is when we would expect you to take the benefits you have available and go off into the sunset and do whatever you're going to do. But then they tell us that average life expectancy is somewhere between 78 and 79. Well, if we look at that and we say, okay, we retire at 66, 67, life expectancy 78 or 79, we've got this 12 or 13 year retirement. I think I can get through there. But they don't take into consideration the accidents happen during your working year and the infant mortalities, all these things that happened before in calculating that number. So real life expectancy is in your late 80s. And as we go out to 2060, it's what we're going to find for retirees going to be into your early 90s. And they also don't really address that most Americans are retiring at 62. So if you say, if I'm retiring at 62, I'm going to live till 80, you've got 18 years there, but reality, you're probably going to live to 90. That's 28 years. We've got many people living to age 100 at this point or late 90s. This is why we've got to plan for this, because there's no going back. This is the problem that people need to understand. when you're 79, even 84 years old, somewhere in there, and again, everyone's health is different, pretty impossible to go back and get that six-figure job back and try to resolve the retirement issues that you're facing, that you could have solved during those earlier years.
Dave, it sounds like we're underestimating life expectancy.
Yeah, over 50% of America does, and this is something I talked about on our podcast that's coming up. I think maybe this Friday. Talked a little bit about the problem most Americans have of talking about death. We're just so afraid to talk about it. We create all these major issues for our beneficiaries, even maybe ourselves, because we don't want to address things that we should when we look at longevity and life expectancy and the fact that we're not going to be here. I mean, no one's got out of this alive, so you got to understand that that's not going to happen. But we need to spend more time addressing these issues so that we can better plan for them.
So, Dave, we look at longevity as an average, and people think, well, we could end up living longer or much less. But I want to ask you what the harm is if we're only planning for our actual life expectancy.
Yeah, what's happening is people are running out of money before they pass away, and I get that there's a group of people out there that are saying, "Hey, maybe my health's in a situation that I don't really care that I live that old. I'm hoping I pass away in maybe my early 70s or somewhere in that period of time." Everyone's got a different goal and plan for their life, but the reality of it is we don't generally get a pick when that happens. Now,
Yeah.
maybe we get to it within a small time frame if we start having issues and need to go on to hospice, and we say, "Look, we're going to just allow life to take its course and go to a place that we need to go to." But when we look at this, it's like it's just not happening when we look across for everyone else.
Dave, I think the last thing that I want to bring up about this is we need to take a fresh look at what we're using for our retirement strategy and see how it's built, so we could really talk about supporting this long, this long retirement. And I think that's something that we just really have to take a good look at.
Yeah, people really want to bury their head in the sand on it. You may even have a lot of money and think, okay, I've got a lot of money. I'm pulling X dollars out. Surely it's never going to run out without even calculating what is going to happen. And then you have a downturn in the market, or you've got retirees. We see this one all the time, unfortunately, too, where they just think that pool of money is endless because it's more than they've ever had. They now have time to go online and look at boats and RVs and nice houses on the beach, whatever the case may be. Think, well, I've got plenty of money. This little bit, 100 grand here or 100 grand there is not going to hurt it. And it's killing retirement plans. It's just something that, Tony Robbins, he's one that, everybody's got a different opinion on, but I loved in his book when he talked about this, that far too many times we think we've got to own things to have this nice lifestyle. With what most of us use these items on, like a boat or an RV or a vacation home, any of these things, be much cheaper for us to just go rent them when we use them. Well, if it's a week or two or whatever it may be, usually much cheaper to rent. So you've just got to reassess your retirement, reassess your spending, make sure you've got a plan that's going to last as long as you do.
Yeah, very, very well said, Dave. Well, we'll continue to move on. I've got Tyler's question up now. I am 67 and my wife is 61. How would a reverse mortgage work for us?
Tyler, good question. So, one of the issues you've got there with your wife being 61 is to be able to actually sign on to a reverse mortgage. Got to be at least age 62, but you're close enough to that point. Maybe your birthday's coming up and that could happen. But really, when you look at it, you in theory want to get both of you on the reverse mortgage. Now, if you're married at the time, which you obviously are when you pull a reverse mortgage out, she still may be able to stay in that home if you were to pass away. But what we really want to do is make sure both spouses are on the reverse mortgage, especially if you're both on the title, so that if one of you does pass away, the other one doesn't get kicked out of the house. One of the big challenges you don't want to have happen with a reverse mortgage is have family members that are living with you thinking that they're going to be able to stay there long term, and then you spend all that money down. The mortgage company comes knocking saying you owe hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe the value of the home, and it needs to be paid off. And you either got to sell it or somehow come up with that extra money. So should look at it again. I would get some advice in detail, more detail if you're going to look at this, but probably going to be to your advantage to wait until she's 62 to be able to get both of you signed on to here.
So, Dave, you talked about kind of as that non-borrowing spouse. First of all, I love your advice of making sure they're both on there. And if she's not on there, I like that some of those rules have changed that so she can remain in the house after, like for example, after Tyler died. Um, But could she still borrow any of those funds if that was the case?
Yeah, I mean, if she's younger, no. I mean, that's all going to be locked into Tyler, and everything's going to be based upon him and the amount of money that's coming out of there for the reverse mortgage, whether they choose a line of credit or a monthly payment. Which I will tell you, if you're out there looking at these, my recommendation is the line of credit. It gives you more freedom in what you do. Obviously, you could turn that into a monthly payment just by taking money out each month from the line of credit to allow you to get access. But one of the problems we have when we get locked into a payment is inflation, other things happen that cause it to where that money maybe is not as efficient for us, or maybe we don't even need the money for a few months. And yet now we're taking it out and having to pay that interest back through the loan itself. We're not coming out of pocket for it, but it's getting accrued inside the loan, making the outstanding balance higher than maybe we need it to be.
Dave, you do a webinar on reverse mortgage. What makes this topic worthy, and it's not bad, but worthy of an entire hour webinar?
Because for about 10% of the population, it can be an absolute great thing for them. And unfortunately, the problem is, CR, usually it's that 10% that doesn't get education and webinars and live events and podcasts and things that we do. Because generally it's the poor segment of the population that's not spending a lot of time in these type of environments. It's just not something that's passionate, that's been a passion for them, don't have a lot of assets. So they think, why should I waste my time listening to a bunch of guys talk about my financial future? But when we look at it, for those that finally grasp on to the reality that if I've got a $300,000 or a $500,000 home and I really only have my Social Security to live off of, why would I not want to start taking that equity out, being able to spend it to improve my lifestyle now? And then when I pass away, okay, maybe the mortgage company gets the full home because we've exceeded the value. Maybe they get the majority of the value of the home because of the loan amount that I've taken out. But this is another area too, CR, that too many retirees allow their kids to have a great life after they die, and they don't have a great life during their retirement. And this is another reason why I'm so passionate about it. I want you to spend every penny if it means it allows you to do what you want to do in retirement. Now, if you're someone who has more money than you can spend or want to spend, fine, leave some for your kids. But if you're going to not go on vacation because you want to leave some money to your children, sorry, folks, that's not a responsibility, in my opinion, you have at the point they get adults. Go on that vacation, blow that money, do whatever you've got to do there.
Dave, I love your advice with that because, like you said, we have seen so many people that have sacrificed for their children. It comes into loans for school. They're still taking those on, or the grandparents are. I mean, you have been doing podcasts and talking to several guests that talk about this, and it's so heartbreaking to see that they're sacrificing so much for their kids or grandkids, and they're giving up everything in their retirement for them.
Well, and there really comes a point that we've got to shut it off. And we came to this realization yesterday. One of our sons is getting married. He worked for us a while, been a good friend of yours as well. And he's getting married. And he was calling us for a bunch of advice. And it's typical advice that we as parents would give a child. And many people I know would continue to give this advice into their 40s, 50s, and 60s. And it finally just hit me. It's like, look, this is not our advice to give. It's your and your new wife's responsibility to figure this out. Now, if you need help financially, if you can't figure it out and you guys want to come back and ask our opinion, great. But you're coming to us to get in the middle of something that we don't need to be in the middle of. I look back on my family. I talk about the TV all the time. My dad wouldn't give me. Best thing he ever did, because it forced me to say, look, Lise, you and I have got to figure this out together. If we don't, we're going to have issues long term or short term, one or the other. We've got to figure this out together. And it allowed us to have those communication times that we needed to work through being poor, work through not having what we needed, work through the trials so that hopefully one day life could be better.
And Dave, I appreciate that because I did that with my wife and my in-laws for a long time too. We asked for a lot of things and they said, hey, it's just not going to work out. And we were so angry because we wanted them to answer and solve our problems for us. And I love the advice that you're giving is let people go through and get this on their own because it's a really important piece to learn from.
If you think of what made most of us, we had to go through that. It's like he had mentioned the other day, he said something about, the challenges of eating, food that typically you would eat if you didn't have a whole lot of money. That may be your thing. And I'm like, we did it. Again, it wasn't fun. Ramen, and we were spending back in the day
Yeah.
$10 a week on groceries. We were buying ramen, maybe buy a gallon of milk once a month or something as a splurge. But that's what made us who we were. That's what allowed us to realize that, hey, saving, investing, spending time trying to better ourselves, put money aside for ourselves and our kids and charity was a much better option than what we were living through at that period of time when we were first married.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Dave, I wanted to jump on and bring Elliot in here live from YouTube. His question is, and Elliot's our world traveler. I love to see his comments, and I appreciate you being here today with us. I might have asked this before. Would you recommend to spend Roth cash to pay for Roth conversions? This would facilitate converting more pre-tax money to Roth IRAs.
Generally not if you can avoid it, because again, if you use that money, you're pulling it back out, even though you're converting more into there, you're still having to pull a portion of that out. But you're right. If you have no other assets and you're saying, I've got this money available, the tax is 24%, and I can move all this money over and go ahead and pull it out of the Roth account to be able to allow that to happen. Yes, I'm not fully against that. Just really the best option we have is if we can take that taxable money that so many of us seem to have more of than we should, pay the taxes out of there, and then allow that all of that Roth money to stay there tax free going forward.
Great question, Elliot. Thank you so much for submitting that. And Dave, we'll continue on here. I've got a whole group of questions still. I'm ready to throw at you. So
Yeah,
I hope you're ready.
you bet.
All right. So let's get my next one here from Shannon. If I am on disability right now, will that impact my Social Security benefits later?
No, it's not, but understand, let me make sure you understand how it works. So once you go on to disability, they're basing that upon your full retirement age benefit. So again, if you're this year, what, Shan's 60, if you
Mhm.
look at it, what her full retirement age is going to be 67. So what they're doing is basing her disability benefits based upon that amount. Once she hits 67, what's going to happen is it's going to transition automatically into Social Security. You're not going to do anything. It's just taking money out of a disability bucket on the Social Security side into a Social Security side. You would have the option to stop benefits at that time if you were in a financial position to do so, and then allow those benefits to grow through the delayed retirement credits up to 70. Now, most people who are disabled, that's not an option. Obviously, a lot of money was spent to go through the process, usually of what makes people disabled from a medical standpoint, and not able to work and save and do all those things. But you will see that transition. And again, the only thing it's impacting, I guess, is the fact that being on disability, you can't earn enough money to build those credits. So whatever it ends up being from day one, that's what you're going to get inflation adjusted throughout basically the rest of your lifetime, unless you're able to go back to work somewhere.
So if Shannon is still on disability benefits and she reaches her full retirement age, so she doesn't have to do any conversion to get that social to convert over to the Social Security retirement benefits.
No, they just automatically do it. And I don't know. I've not looked at this close enough to see. I've never seen a statement if someone even, they get told that it even happens. They just know on the back end, for those of us that deal with this, know on the back end that it just gets transferred from, again, from the one bucket to the other, because they do have two different buckets there that they're trying to pull this money from. And obviously, depending on how much they pull from each, the financial impact of it long term is going to, could have a big or a small impact.
I just find that so fascinating because as we talk about Social Security, I mean, they're great folks over there. I mean, Jim was on here. He worked there at the Social Security Administration, and he talked about a lot of the great things there. But I'm just surprised because it feels like a lot of the times on that Social Security Administration side, we have to do the work or we have to do that. So to see like a conversion like that, it actually makes me feel good that there's some things like that are automatic.
Yeah, it is a problem, and we've talked a lot about it. Maybe because I've started experiencing more guys like Mark and Jim, that Jim you had on the show. Mark and Jim have been on our shows before. They've been involved with what we do. They provide great education on Social Security. But you look at individuals like that, and they've always commented how bad it is currently from getting an answer standpoint from Social Security. Well, I've experienced it a lot lately. I've had so many people, including my own sister, that have gone, and again, they're not only not trying to give you the maximum benefits, they're oftentimes giving you the wrong information and limiting the benefits you're entitled to. had someone the other day that was told they didn't qualify for any survivor benefits, which they'd been married for decades and had everything in place to be able to allow that to happen. And they're saying, no, you're not going to qualify for any benefits. Well, if someone just took that as an answer saying, hey, I called Social Security and they obviously know what they're doing, and I'm going to take that as an answer, think of how much money they would miss out on in their retirement just because they called who they thought was the right person and they didn't know what was going on.
So, Dave, you always give this advice, and I want people to remember this advice and do not forget this. When you call Social Security Administration office, what should you do, Dave? You don't call it once. What do you do?
Twice, three, four times. Make sure you get the right answer. I mean, part of the problem, like my sister went through this. She got four. I try not to get, again, I want to help my family, but know that I'm one that hey, I'll give you the information, but you got to take some action on your own. I'm not going to call and deal with it all for you. I'm going to tell you what to do and then allow you to do some of the own work to make this happen. And so she was the one calling, took her 4 calls, 2 different offices to finally get the right answer for what should be done with her benefits. And it was all over the board. And again, what we were talking about, her husband passes away. He's receiving benefits. She's under age 60, but has a child under the age of 16 in the home. So she's qualifying for widower benefits. And then her son is going to get those survivor benefits as well. And they messed it up. They told her that, they had to cut in half at one point. You're going to get half of what you're entitled to. And I'm like, that is not the right answer. I can calculate this from what your husband was getting when he passed away. It should be in this ballpark, should be within $100 of what I'm telling you here. And they're not even close to that. So finally, they did get it right. They finally got it resolved, but it was a month and a half of her calling and getting wrong answers and then waiting for checks to show up to see if they're even the right checks. And it's really a mess.
So, I mean, again, Dave, what was it? 40% of us are just relying on Social Security alone. So, if we do the one call, we just wait and put all that effort, and we have 40%, and that's it. Yeah, that makes me a little nervous.
Yeah, I can't even imagine out there how many people, and I don't know how you'd figure this out, and I don't know how you could even ever go out and find these individuals, but there's got to be a decent part of the population that even though they've signed up, they still would have an opportunity to get some additional benefits, either through an ex-spouse, through survivor benefits, through their picking survivor and allowing theirs to grow that became higher by the time it reached age 7, that they're just not making the decision to get this money, that they have no idea that they've left, tens of thousands of dollars on the table. And I guess what we don't know oftentimes doesn't hurt us. But I just got to believe there's 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 10% of America that's claiming benefits that aren't even close to what they could get even today if they went in. Now there's a bunch that made decisions and you can't go back. That's 80 to 90% of the population that made the wrong choice. But again, I just can't imagine how much money is going to waste that people could truly have if they just contacted them right now with their situation.
Well, Dave, let's hope those who are watching the show are sharing, and that's caring. And that's some of the things we're trying to do, is get people out there to not only get knowledge from themselves, but to help the communities around them, their circles, their family. Because as we do that, as we help our parents or our children, like you said, it's about giving the information and letting them do their part, but it's allowing them the right information. And that's the whole reason why we're here, is to make sure we're giving you correct information that then you can go forward and take care of.
Yeah.
All right, Dave, let's jump over to Charles here. His question is, what is one way to protect my assets from a market downturn?
So you've got various options out there. I'll tell you the one that most people choose, which is not the right one, but most people, what they're going to choose is your cash accounts. We have a ton of, especially CPAs that we work with, that are conservative, but in reality, it's most of America. It's got way too much money in cash accounts, but they put them inside there going, okay, the market's going to turn down. The cash is not only protected against a downturn, but it's FDIC insured. We've got all these protections. And so they put it inside of the money market accounts, the certificates of disappointment, whatever the case may be. And the problem, though, with these accounts are, even though you protected against market loss, you didn't protect against inflation. So when we look back at the last couple of years and the 8 to 9% inflation that we've had each year going through this period of time, it's wreaked havoc on your spendability of the assets inside of here. So our recommendation is to go into index products through insurance companies, would be annuities or permanent life insurance, where they have the ability over time to deal with these inflation issues. Now, yes, during a year like right now, where if the market's down and we've got inflation both going on at the same time, hey, you're still going to be at a zero. But as things turn around, or when we have those up markets and inflation that we had back in 2021 and going into 22, you were getting the upside of that market. So you were getting a return greater than what inflation was in many situations. So at least you were keeping up with it, but then also not risking this big downturn that just happened.
And Dave, I know we're out of time, but I want to ask this final question before we wrap up here. So, if we're looking at what Charles is saying, how do we recession proof our retirement then? Is there maybe five things you could give us or a few items that you could say, hey, if you do these things, you're going to be a lot better than where you are?
Yeah, yeah. The biggest thing, it depends on two, one, where you're at. So I'm going to talk as if you haven't gone into retirement yet. One of the first things you're going to want to do is really figure out as you're getting ready to go into here. Let's, assuming that we're going to have additional recessions in the future, we're going to have these downturns. Now we obviously have them. Number one, you've got to get this Social Security figured out. You've got to make sure you're getting the maximum dollars that you're entitled to that's going to work best inside your plan. Now, I understand there's some of you that really financially have no other option than to claim at age 62 because your bodies are shot. You can't continue to work. You have no other skills that you think you can use. So you're saying, I've just got to claim. But if you're not that person, we want to make sure we're maximizing that. We also want to look at these principal protected products to make sure that as these things happen, we're not losing not only to the market, but to inflation. And then we've got to make sure we're dealing with the risks that come with the market downturn and a recession. Again, we've got to make sure we've got enough cash and stuff available so that we're not having to sell down stock and bonds or whatever you've got or these other products during the down market that are going to create bigger issues for yourself.
So, Dave, I'm going to kind of pull a takeaway from what you talked about. So, the first one you said is making sure you have a plan. So, you talk about you have some type of plan. You make sure you have the right products. You talked about diversifying. And I think with that, the only thing I could add on my side is obviously make sure you have an emergency fund and make sure when you're getting there, you are preparing that budget, making sure those things are really going to help you to get where you need to be.
Yeah, and one thing I will tell everyone, and I'm not great at this, I think we do a pretty good job, but there have got to, all of us have things we're paying for that we don't need to be paying for. My son was getting after us the other day because as they age, we get them off of our phone plan. They go onto their own and they're like, look, Dad, you are paying way too much for your phone. We've been with the same carrier for decades now and just haven't worried about it. But
Mhm.
so he's like, look, you'd be paying half that amount. And so we're in the process of transitioning, but we've all got these type of bills, whether we're got something we're not using, like a gym membership, whether we've got sucked into some auto subscription
Yeah.
plan that we're not using. We also need to take that time to go through those items, tighten our budgets, get the best deals that we can for the products that we're getting, and then make sure as we go forward that we're sticking to those budgets so that we can get through with hopefully not spending any more money than we have to, so that we have some left on the backside.
Very, very well said, Dave. And I appreciate all your time and for being here. I love that you're back. This is so great. So I'm hoping we're going to see you again next week.
Yes, I think so. I don't think I'm going anywhere to my knowledge on a Wednesday. Now, a couple of weeks, I got to go to my son's wedding. So we will be gone on a Thursday, but I think we're here for the next foreseeable future for the Wednesday live events.
Perfect. Now I'll be gone, but I still be here. I'll just be in a different location. It should be pretty exciting. But Dave, one of the things we always like to close with is you usually have a typical Wednesday webinar, but we made a little adjustments this week.
Yes,
So
we
go ahead.
Yes, we did. Yeah, we're doing a Saturday webinar and for a couple of reasons. Number one, we realize that there are many people that their work does not allow them to watch these webinars during the week. But number two, we're hoping for those that are married that they'll take this opportunity to include their spouse to make sure that they're there learning together so that as you're done, you'll have the opportunity to really discuss what you learned, the topics that we covered, and to get yourself into a better position for your retirement.
And you can find that at retirementriskadvisors.com/safe. And you can see the Saturday class webinar. And then there's a couple others that are on other Wednesdays. Dave, one more I wanted to pop up on screen here. This is a really exciting one we haven't done in a long time. is the foundation for a secure retirement. So we touched on Social Security and Medicare just briefly today, but this dives into long-term care and elder abuse. And in fact, this is coming up on Friday.
It is Friday, 10 a.m. Central to 2 p.m. Central. It is a long class. We go 4 hours. We used to break this out, but found that because of the overlaps, people really liked having the class all together so they could gather the information, get their questions answered. And we do encourage you to attend this. These are four basic areas that are often overlooked. If I look at the full retirement spectrum, these get overlooked because if you look at it, for most advisors, they're not making any money off of this. So why should I spend a ton of time educating people on these topics if it's not something that I'm going to make something back on the back end? And we don't take that approach. Our approach is, hey, let us help people, as many people as we can. Let's give them the information. And over time, the right things will come back to us. So we do this class to help you better understand these basic programs that are wreaking havoc on so many retirement plans or creating issues that we're just not addressing, we're not dealing with, we're just sticking our head in the sand, hoping that it won't cause a problem, but it's causing a problem. And we've got to solve that up front so we don't keep allowing this to happen.
And so again, you can catch all of these, all the dates for these webinars at retirementriskadvisors.com/events or /safe. And that will get you to the specific Getting Safely Through Retirement course.
Yeah.
And if you did not get your question today and you would love to submit a question, you can always do that at retirementriskadvisors.com/questions. And that will get you on so you can get your question on one of our live shows, or you can find us on any social media platform and send us a message there, and we'll get those added on future shows. Dave, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us again. It's always great to have you live.
You're welcome. Always good to be back.
All right, everyone. We'll see you guys again next Wednesday at 11 a.m. Central, and we'll see you then.
Bye.